Welcome to the Bridge the Gap podcast. Here's your host, Dustin Udke.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bridge the Gap. We got a great episode tonight. We're going to be talking all things preseason, what you should and shouldn't take out of it, how to go about watching preseason, if you should watch it at all. And to join me tonight, I've got the one, the only, Nick Skrip from Fantrax. Nick, how's it going tonight?
Very good, very good. It's a hectic time of year as we are inching closer and closer towards the NFL season, but it's been a lot of fun with the engagement we're starting to get from our audiences and all the content that's being pushed out there. So football is as exciting as ever right now.
It really is, and we're seeing preseason games with more starters playing. You know, teams are running out their full offenses, their first team offense, first team defense, so we're getting that. We've got a whole slate of games this week. Before we get into our main topics, Nick, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your content, and what you got going.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter or X at P2W Fantasy. That's where a majority of my content is. I push out articles, graphics for Fantrax, data drops, some threads, a lot of short videos, pretty much a mixture of everything. I kind of pride myself in diversifying my content. I'm also on Instagram, also on TikTok, do stuff for Fantrax as far as their social media. If you ever see graphics or anything from them, it's from me, low-key. But yeah, trying to get the team organized and ready to go for this coming season, and really loving how content's going right now and all the engagement that we're getting.
Yeah, and it'll be scrolling across the bottom of the whole show, but follow Nick on Twitter or X, follow Fantrax. You know, people say I do a lot, and I look at you, and you do way more than I do. You are putting out content left and right, and you work a full-time job. You've got 3 kids, one who is a baby. You know, obviously the wife. You've got a lot going on. You're still willing to. You're still able to put out not only a ton of content, but quality content. So if you're looking for someone to follow, like when people follow me, I'm like, you need to follow Nick because Nick's got the content. Like Nick's pushing out stuff left and right on all platforms. So you know, I always appreciate your hustle and everything. So yeah, check them out on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok. Check out Fantrax. If you don't know, I also write for Fantrax, working with Nick. So we got some stuff coming out that I just think I had an article come out the other day, or it's coming out. We're getting some stuff ready for the season. So we're excited for the season at Fantrax. I think it's going to be a great season in terms of content, helping you guys win your fantasy leagues and have fun playing. So Nick, I don't know if you know, but this show, we start every show with a game.
What exactly is the game?
Well, it is not a quiz or a trivia contest, nor is it a test of brute strength or athleticism. At its core, it's just a children's game, and I would wager that some of you here this evening have played Would You Rather?
So a classic Would You Rather, and we are talking preseason and preseason games. So Nick, my Would You Rather for you, and you are a Bears fan, correct?
Correct. I used to say unfortunately, but things are looking a little bit better now.
Looking better.
We'll see.
But in general, as a fan of the NFL, would you rather go to the Super Bowl once every 5 years? So you get a general nosebleed seat for the Super Bowl. Every 5 years, you can go watch the game. Or you can go to one home game each season and have a VIP experience. So whether that's, you know, field passes, 50-yard line, whatever the VIP experience looks like for you at a Bears game, which would you rather have? The Super Bowl, which is the pinnacle of the thing, you know, once every 5 years, or one home game every year, but a VIP experience?
Easy one for me. I'd rather be at the VIP games for my home team. To be honest, I could care less about traveling to go to another stadium, not knowing who that team is going to be or who those teams are going to be. Life gets complicated when you have, you know, a wife and a couple kids. So, you know, telling my wife every 5 years if she's not coming with me, I would assume she's coming with me. You're trying to figure out every 5 years, what are we going to do with the kids? We have to go travel for the Super Bowl game. I don't know if we're going to really like the teams. I'd rather just be at home for the Super Bowl. I think historically I've always had great times on the Super Bowl with friends and family. I've thrown a lot of Super Bowl parties, but VIP at the Bears game, home, coordinate everything with the kids, get to see my actual team, pretend I'm like a celebrity that day just because I get the VIP package and all that. Sounds pretty good. My one issue with the Bears, the last handful of times I've gone, is I've always gone when the weather is not super sexy, just like
So every
very
game
cold.
is that.
Basically, I think there's like a window as a Chicago fan where, you go to one of the opening 2 games, or like you have to face the consequences of it, maybe feeling like it's -20. But give me the VIP package.
Yeah, I think I would if I lived closer. So I'm a Bills fan. If I lived closer to the Bills Stadium and that was easier for me to get to, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, so I'm 3 hours from Chicago, 3 hours from Green Bay. So even to take a VIP experience there would be, that's a good chunk of travel to get to and from. I think I would personally take the Super Bowl. Hopefully my Bills can be in a Super Bowl more often than not. I think it'd be cool just to go travel. I think the ambiance of like the week, like the day of the Super Bowl, all the stuff that they do for the fan experience. I think I'm leaning that, but I can see you being so close to the Bear Stadium and having being close to your home team makes it a little easier to go to the VIP experience. I know people that do VIP, packages for their stadium. I have a friend who goes to Rams games, and he's always in the VIP section, and he seems to love it. Seems like a cool thing, right? All the free food and just, yeah, you're right. You feel like a celebrity. So an interesting pick. I think it all depends on where you are and how close you are to your home team. But you are close to the Bears, and you're a Bears fan, so it makes it easier. I'm, a 5-hour flight from Buffalo, so it's not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Not, even if they paid for that, it'd be a little harder for me to get there. That's traveling a whole weekend of experience. But Nick, let's talk preseason. We're in week 2, 3, depending on how you number it, because the Hall of Fame game is like an extra game, and that technically is week 1, and it's not really week 1 because only 2 teams play. Your Bears played in the Hall of Fame game. Let's start with the basic question. Should we even watch preseason games as a form of film analysis? Or should we just watch them as it's fun watching football? Watch it as we would like a college game or a high school game, or just the fact that it's football on and XFL, AFL. How do you look at preseason games? Like, are you watching them, and what are you watching them for?
Yeah, I think with preseason, one of the biggest takeaways people should have is who is earning a role on the team. I think that's the biggest thing. Their biggest thing. I think a lot of these the NFL teams, actually all NFL teams, is figuring out who makes the roster, figuring out the depth chart. It's nice to see guys that you wonder how they're going to look good. Like we were talking Bears, like Caleb Williams, he's looked very good. We knew he was good, though, but now it's more of like a confirmation. Hey, he actually does look good in the games. Let's not get too crazy. It's preseason, but yeah, I think it's more of for the teams to kind of sort out, all right, let's get some guys reps. Let's figure out our depth chart, who can earn some roles. We're going to try guys out in different spots. We're going to give guys different opportunities. We have to make cuts. It's more for them, I think, than for us. I think all of us are just like degenerate fans that talk about football 365 days a year, and now it's on TV, and it's cool that it's back. But the one thing I'm going to say is, like, when it comes to the film analysis, this is going to be like my spiciest take of this entire podcast.
Uh-huh.
I don't knock anybody that analyzes film. I won't knock it. I won't knock it at all. And I respect people that hustle in any sort of way. But I have an extensive college soccer background. I was a Division II player. I coached Division III college. I have 10 years of club coaching experience and 3 years of high school coaching experience. I took a lot of pride in breaking down film, and I knew a lot of coaches that had similar backgrounds or more extensive backgrounds that couldn't break down film. And breaking down film meant like scouting the other opponent, looking at high school players that we wanted to recruit, things like that. And if the average person came up to me and says, hey, I can do what you do, I would laugh at them. I would laugh at them about it because they don't have the experience. They've never been trained to do it. They haven't been in an environment where someone has actually shown them what to look for. So a part of me always wonders, like, when these people say I broke down the film and I analyzed the film, like how much of that is like actually valid, And I feel like guys who actually it's their livelihood would look at us on Twitter saying I broke down the film and like laugh at us, be like, oh, did you? Because that's how I would be for my own sport that I have an extensive background. If somebody said I just broke down this college tape, I'd be like, oh yeah, you did. Sounds good. So little rant there, but again, my 3 check boxes. It's for the teams to figure out depth charts, roles, who's making the team, and confirmation.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I watched preseason games, and right, there's a ton of them on, and I can't watch them all. Obviously, we talk about we have wives and kids and jobs. Obviously, we love football. We love the game of football, and we're generous. You're going to watch anything, right? And there is a the NFL, even at preseason, is a step above college and a step above XFL, AFL, UFL, Canadian football, right? Those spring leagues, which are fun to watch. They're fun games, but it's not the same. So I kind of balance the two between preseason is like almost just like a primer of like, hey, this is just getting us ready for real football. And kind of that, I don't want to say film analysis, but watch what do my eyeballs tell me? I agree with you. I
Yeah.
think a lot of us go, we broke down the film and they don't really know how to break down the film.
Mhm.
For me, film analysis is not necessarily like, oh, this guy does this well, but it's when there's those glaring mistakes. Okay, then I could like you can spot bad plays really like an average person can spot the bad plays on a football
Yeah.
game, right? You can
Yeah.
watch a receiver not catch the ball or not reach for the ball, not sure whatever. You can watch a quarterback horribly overthrow, underthrow ball. It's harder to break down the footworks of a quarterback or the route tree of a wide receiver. That's the stuff you really have to learn. And I agree with you on that. There's people who just say they broke down film and they haven't. And if you want to learn how to break down film, there's people out there. I know like Lance Zierlein was going to do a school. Like there's guys out there that will teach you how to break down film. And there's guys that dedicate. So if you want to learn film, like watch the guys who are dedicated to, and that's all they do. Like there's guys out there who just break down film. They don't do anything else, but they just break down film. Couch Scouts is out there. They break down college film. So that's how I look at preseason. I think it's fun to watch. I enjoy watching football. Obviously, like I'm a football junkie. I'm doing a football-based podcast. I want to watch the games, but I agree we can't take too much. I think it is for the teams to evaluate their players. I think it's for them to figure out who they're going to cut, who they don't, what kind of rotation, how many receivers they want to keep. Do they want to keep 6 or 7? How many defensive backs? How many safeties? It's for that. It's for them to gear up, get these guys some reps. So guys who are either new to the system or new to the NFL, these rookies, these second-year players who don't have a ton of experience. I think that's what it's for. So what are you taking away when you watch a game? Are you taking away anything in terms of fantasy? Are you going, okay, I note this player got snaps, this player got reps with the first team, this guy got targets? What kind of stuff are you taking away when you're watching preseason?
Yeah, I think I pay more attention to reports that come out from camps and things like that over just sitting in front of the game. Like you said, I just don't have the time right now to sit and watch every preseason game and break it down. I pay attention a lot though. I obviously do. It's a big piece of my everyday life is creating content and sharing information. But I think the biggest things I'm looking for is those situations that are not completely black and white. When we look at wide receiver rooms that are up for grabs and running back competitions, like for a long time, there was a lot of debate about Denver's backfield, right? Javonte Williams, a lot of people liked him before, then they didn't, after the big injury. People liked Audric Estime as a prospect out of Notre Dame. Jaleel McLaughlin was like the new, I don't know, Christian McCaffrey of fantasy Twitter for like a little bit. So you had all these people kind of chiming in, but now that we have more reports and we're seeing guys in the games, now we can kind of start separating. Hey, this guy looks back to his normal self in Javonte. And hey, like Jaleel might carve out a little bit of a role. Audric might be a good handcuff to have. We can sort that out. Look at the Patriots wide receiver room. Okay, who's out there running first team reps? Who's out there making the big plays? Who's connected with Drake May? Who's connected with Jacoby Brissett? Those are situations where we came in projecting it, but it wasn't black and white. So I think those situations are the most important at the end of the day, because we know that, Justin Jefferson's good. And then we see Jordan Addison for the Vikings too. He made a big play. Well, we know he's good too, even though he's not Justin Jefferson. So it's more so figuring out what the unknowns are, the big competitions. And there's still a lot of big question marks, out there, like the Chargers running back room. Like there's still like a lot of back and forth on how that's going to look and a lot of different opinions. But that's where I think the focus should be, because there's a lot of unknowns, but there's more knowns to the NFL, I feel like.
I agree with you on that. Like, I think we get to a point where we're looking to confirm our priors, whether that's positive or negative on players. So if we are down on Drake May, we're going to go, well, Drake May's running with the second team, so he's clearly not going to be the starter. If we believed Audric Estime is going to be the new Denver running back and also he looks good, you go, well, see, the film shows me, like, I watched him, he broke off a 60-yard run, and we look for these things to confirm our priors. And I think for any fantasy analysis, for anybody that plays fantasy, know you have priors and don't look to confirm them. Just look at information and then let the information tell you what it is. And if that does confirm your prior, then that does. If it doesn't, you need to reevaluate your thought process. So I do think we get wrapped into this sense of, oh, look what happened. Oh, this guy's running with the ones, right? The Vikings might not have Addison and Jefferson out there, and you're like, well, I don't even know, Bilal Powell or whoever it is, out there running with the ones. And you're like, yeah, but because the other guys aren't playing. Like, there's going to be vets who just don't play in the preseason, right? Look at the Panthers. Adam Thielen's not playing much in the preseason because he's a vet. He doesn't need to. So they're going to give Mingo and Leggett all these opportunities to see what they have, give them the reps, but know when the regular season comes that one of them's going to move back. So that's where I'm at with preseason is go, hey, who's running with who? And I like you said, like who's connected to who. And when we see, especially this week, is where we start seeing more first team offenses really out there for half a quarter. Like we see extended time. That's where I'm going, okay, who's running with the ones, who's running with the twos, and is there anybody ahead of them on the depth chart that just might not be playing for injury, for rest, whatever it is, and will that role continue? And I think you're right. Figuring out who has the role and who doesn't, those murky backfields, those murky wide receiver rooms is really what we should be looking at.
And it's okay to change your mind when it comes to, because you mentioned it right at the beginning. You said, hey, you come into preseason already having priors. You have these ideas. It's okay to come in strong as an analyst or just as a fan, as a fantasy manager, and think one way. And then as preseason goes on, just change your mind. It's completely fine. I think some people hang on to, hey, I said this to begin with, I have to hang on to it. And you don't have to do that. Like I mentioned Denver before, but I liked Troy Franklin as a prospect. I did. I thought that he, in most mock drafts I looked at, was getting drafted at the end of the first or in the second round. He fell in the NFL draft. And I said, hey, Bo Nix was his college quarterback. Now he's his NFL quarterback. He's a sleeper, man. I liked him as a prospect. He has a good connection. Report after report after report has come out that, he's not looking like a guy that's running with the first teams consistently. He's not looking like a guy that might be a starter. He's not looking very important to the team right now. Can that change? Yes. But as of now, I have to go back to my priors saying, he's a big sleeper for fantasy, and say, hey, I might want to take that one back right now. Maybe keep an eye on the waiver wire, but like right now, I'm not going to label him as a sleeper. And that's okay. I can reflect back on my own content and say, you know what? I changed my mind. Chase Brown, another quick example for the Bengals. I said, but I was like, I was talking not so highly of Chase Brown before, saying, he's being overhyped. His window of whatever, he barely touched the ball last year. We're overemphasizing these guys that don't have a good resume and all this stuff. But now there's a lot of reports coming out that he looks great and he's going to touch the ball a lot. And it's going to be a true committee there. And he might be the 1A over Zach Moss. We're not entirely sure there. But now I start to pivot my rankings and say, you know what? Chase Brown was all the way at the bottom. I gotta raise him up. And I think, again, it's okay. You kind of started with it, but I think it's a great point for this podcast. It's okay to gain more information, change your mind, improvise.
Oh, yeah, and it's definitely on my content calendar to do an episode on it's okay being wrong. And I think in today's society, and especially on fantasy Twitter and the world of hot takes, we don't ever want to admit we're wrong. And I think it's okay to make a opinion based on the information you have. But what you have to do is when new information comes in, reevaluate. And then if your opinion needs to change, let it change. And that's okay. It's not necessarily you're wrong. It was, this is what I thought with this amount of information. Now I have more information. This is now what I think based on new information. You can only gauge things on the information you have. And as we get more information, that's where it goes. That's why I don't love these pre-draft rankings of this guy's here, this guy's 1, this guy's 2, this guy's 3. Like we only know a small percentage of the information of, we know what they did in college. We know their combine workout, which gives a little more information. We don't know where they're going, right? Braylon Allen to me was a stud in college.
Yes.
Didn't do much of the combine. So he was a stud going into the combine, didn't do much, went to his pro day, didn't do much there. And then I was like, okay, he's young, he's physically gifted, he did well in college. The information I had said, hey, he should be a sleeper running back. Then he goes to the Jets where he's buried behind Breece Hall. I needed to change it. Go, okay, yeah, I think he's talented, but he's now buried for basically the bulk of his career behind a young, really good running back. So my opinion on Braylon Allen had to change, and that's okay because of the new information I got. I got new information out of it. I said this to Andrew Cooper when I was doing the combine show from Indianapolis. Of there's 4 things I look at. It's their physical skills, right? What did they do? Their production, I look at their head, like, are they smart enough to, like, do they make right cuts, right reads, like that kind of thing. I look at their heart, like getting to interview them at the combine, at the draft, seeing their passion for the game, watching interviews with them, talking to beat reporters, talking to the guys on campus, guys who go to the Senior Bowl. Like, do these people have a passion for football? And then it's about the opportunities they're given. What are they giving, right? If they're not given an opportunity, they're never going to excel. And we see that all the time. Look at Kurt Warner, was a great guy, smart, had it, and then never got even new. When he did, he excelled, and he needs those opportunities. For me, Braylon Allen is just not going to get the opportunities, so I moved him way down my rankings. I think I had him as a top 3 running back pre-draft, which I don't like to like. I don't like talking that way because I don't think there's enough information. He was pretty much like a 4th round pick for Jeff because he's buried on the Jets. So I think that's a really good thing of looking at your information of your priors, what you had, and allowing the more information we get from preseason and beat reporters in camp and all this stuff. Allow that to change and morph your opinion, and not being okay with, hey, I had a different opinion then than I do now because I have more information, and that's okay. If you guys are watching this, we appreciate you tuning in. Come over to YouTube, drop a comment of who you had priors on, who you were high on, and maybe people that you changed your opinion on through preseason. Let us know in the comments. We'd love to chat with you guys. This podcast is all about creating conversation between not just me and the guests, but you that are watching. So come over to YouTube, hit that like and subscribe. Nick, what other preseason tips and tricks do you have? Or things you're taking out of preseason that you can maybe store in the back of your mind for the fantasy season? Is there anything else you're kind of little nuggets you're taking from preseason?
Yeah, I think once again, it's just trying to pay attention to who is earning what sort of role, especially in the opportunities that are wide open. I think you have to also pay attention to injuries and how they may impact others. For instance, I was very high on Marquise Brown in Kansas City. I thought he brought what we like about Rashee Rice. I think he brought what we like about Xavier Worthy in one player when he's healthy. But now that he is banged up, that frees up more opportunities for the other 2 wide receivers at the end of the day. And maybe he was always wide receiver 3. I didn't see it that way, but because now I understand that he's going to miss some time, I thought it was like 4 to 6 weeks potentially. That's going to bump up Xavier Worthy. It's going to bump up Rashee Rice. I think Xavier Worthy more so because we knew he was going to be a field stretcher, but he's a rookie, and we weren't quite sure about the target share. So pay attention to guys that get banged up this time of year because it frees up an opportunity for somebody else at the end of the day, especially in the running back, back room. So, if a starter goes down, who's the second and third guy in line? If J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are banged up or not looking great, is it the Kamani Vidal show? I mean, there's just like the ripple effect of a preseason. So I'd say whenever you hear news, when it comes to injuries or reports that come out, don't just think about that singular player. Think about the domino effect. All right, how does this impact somebody else on the roster, and what does that mean for fantasy football? I think that's a great way as an analyst or just a fantasy football manager or fan to get ahead of other people that are receiving the same information. Is just thinking outside of the one player. How does this impact everything else? What falls because of this? How does it translate to fantasy football? And that can mean you just beating the waiver wire on somebody at the end of the day, something as small as that.
No, I think that's great. That ripple effect of injuries certainly is something we don't keep track because we go, this guy's injured. Oh no, maybe you need to pick up his direct handcuffs. So right, a running back gets injured, you pick up the direct handcuff, but that also gives a 3rd string guy to now be the number 2. And then on top of that, I look at the lingering issues. So someone like Curtis Samuel right now has a turf toe injury. Yes, not a major injury, but an injury that has lingering effects and can flare back up through the season. So maybe I'm lowering Curtis Samuel, but I'm adjusting up Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, right? And just knowing that could be a ripple effect. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is coming back from a hamstring, which wasn't a significant injury, and he's taken some time off, and he's coming back, and you expect him to be fully healthy. But does that have a lingering effect where he's not 100% going into week 1? So does that bump up David Montgomery? We saw it with Joe Burrow. He had that calf strain last year, played and just didn't look right for the first couple weeks. So those lingering, yes, they can play, but they're not 100%. So that ripple effect. And for me, it's looking at, and this is a sneaky thing, backup quarterbacks and who they're connected with as the season goes on. So I just put out an article on Fantrax the other day of basically ranking the backup quarterbacks, but I think we've seen it enough instances where a backup, starter goes down, backup's going to start the next week, and a wide receiver 4 or 5 on that team all of a sudden like goes off for a week or two because they have that chemistry. So if you're looking at, you know, a Jake Browning coming in, who's he had connection with? Trent Irwin, because they're playing a lot on second team offense. They played a lot of second team in the preseason. So they have that connection because chemistry between a wide receiver and quarterback is super important. So noting those things, that's where I have a little notebook and I just jot down notes. I have it next to my recliner and I just jot down notes as things are happening of, okay, when Jake Browning's playing, Trent Irwin was getting a lot of these passes. When, this guy's the backup, whether it's Jacoby Brissett for the Patriots and he's the backup, and okay, he's really favoring Kendrick Bourne, and I know that's happening and that's what's going to come in. That's how I look at preseason, so I like to make those little notes because I think it is very valuable. And you're right, you can beat the waiver wire on people just because you paid attention a little more than someone else. Nick, who are some names of preseason players that you've either risen on or have fallen for you on your draft boards right now?
Yeah, so I mentioned Chase Brown is a riser. I'm not going to say at all that I'm like all in on him, but I think one thing you have to understand at the end of the day is that the running back position gets very thin throughout every fantasy season. So you have to try to identify guys that are going to touch the ball, guys that are going to find roles consistently. So, that's why I mentioned him before. There's other guys that, I can spit out like Javonte Williams. There's been a lot of good reports. He's actually looked pretty good. I've always been this offseason in on him. I have the receipts and I just said, hey, literally, this guy tore his ACL, came back from it. Wasn't, his rookie self, and everybody thinks he sucks now because he was coming off of an ACL tear. I think Breece Hall did that to him because he went crazy after an ACL tear. But realistically, we used to think that this guy was like then one of the next big things coming up. As a rookie, I wouldn't say, a top 3 guy, but a lot of people after that rookie season were like Javonte Williams, dynasty fantasy football riser, and we forgot about that. And he caught like 40 something balls this past year, and he had some decent games, and I think he's healthy now. So hearing the reports on him is reassuring. I'd also say I want to make a point too. Every single year in redraft, we underdraft rookies, and if you look at ADP, we underdraft rookies every single year because I think there's a lot of people that don't want to reach for a rookie, and there's the, rookie fever, quote unquote, which a lot of people may have. But you look at some guys that I like heading into the season that I feel like are still underdrafted in redraft. Brian Thomas Jr. Reports come out that he has been smoking everybody at camp in Jacksonville. Nobody can keep up with him. He's making big plays. Now, that's different in the games when he actually takes his first NFL snap in a regular season game. But this is a guy that led the FBS in receiving touchdowns in 2023 with Malik Neighbors on the field with him. And then Ladd McConkey, it's another guy. You got no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams, no Austin Eckler, no Gerald Everett. They're all gone from the Chargers. Now, Joshua Palmer has a nice connection already established, but you got a rookie that is a highly athletic slot wide receiver that just makes competent plays. I mean, he was second fiddle to Brock Bowers in college, and he didn't have great numbers, Ladd McConkey, but he's a guy in a great situation who's, known for just making the right plays. My last one here too, a lot of debate on the Patriots wide receiver room, and a lot of people love Javon Baker. I'm big on Jalen Polk because he's the first guy that the Patriots went and grabbed after Drake May. In the first round, they drafted Drake May, and in the second round, regardless if people liked it or not, they drafted Jalen Polk, and he had a very nice season across from Rome Odunze. I know McMillan was banged up, but he still had a very nice season. And you can look at all these Javon Baker clips, but if you really look at Jalen Polk, like this guy is scoring touchdowns, connected to Jacoby Brissett. He's chilling at Bruins games back when they were playing with Drake May. He's got a lot of camp highlights, and I think he's the only player on the roster that, for me, profiles as a true wide receiver one on a team. Kendrick Bourne's coming off of that injury. Demario Douglas had a fine rookie season. I think he led the team, and we kind of overemphasize that at times, but he looked pretty good. But he's another one that, hey, if he wins the job, you're looking at a guy who's being drafted like wide receiver, 68 or something like that, who could make a fantasy impact. So I wrote an article that came out this morning, but I think we always are looking for the next Puka Nacua, but at the end of the day, if we can find the next Jaden Reed or Rashee Rice, these guys that have like decent draft capital, second round, third round picks that land in good opportunities and are fantasy impactful, that's how you win in fantasy, I think.
Yeah, and interesting you brought up Puka Nacua, because I was going to bring him up, because I do think we are always looking for that Puka Nacua, that late round guy in the teen round that'll be, a top 10 guy. And that's all fine and dandy, but more often not that we miss on those guys. And I think, yes, we undervalue rookies, but we do kind of get that rookie fever. Like, we want the new hotness. I think we undervalue the veterans a ton. I mean, look at someone like Derrick Henry at the top of your drafts is going behind a ton of running backs. But even later on, I watched that Broncos game and everyone was talking about Bo Nix. I'm like, we realized that most of his passes were going to Tim Patrick, who's 30, who's missed 2 seasons. Like, Tim Patrick is never going to be a top 10 wide receiver, but Tim Patrick is going to be a wide receiver 3 for your fantasy team almost every week. And I think we just go, well, he doesn't have the upside, so we don't want him. And I think there's a room on your lineup, and I think there should be guys in your lineup that are just consistent weekly starters for you, whether that's a wide receiver 3 or running back 2, a flex play. Those guys are gonna win you championships, right? The Gerald Everett's, who might outplay Cole Kmet, like, that's a solid play. Tyler Higbee, I got him 2 years ago, like, as like the 15th wide tight end off the board, and he was tight end 4 because he's just a consistent guy. Yes, he's never going to score me 20 points in 1 week, but he's going to get me 8 points every week. I'll take that consistency. I'll take the high floor, low ceiling play. And I think we just don't see them getting the respect they deserve because everyone wants the guy who can go out and be a game changer and be the guy you can brag about. I'm never going to brag that much about drafting Gerald Everett. This year, I'm not going to brag about drafting, a Tim Patrick, but Tim Patrick will help me win championships. And it's not only does it help you win championships, but also takes a lot of stress off your life. And we're going to talk about this in a future episode. Like, having a guy I just know is a plug and play, even at flex, saves me a ton of headache. I don't have to worry about, well, this guy, hey, I know Tim Patrick's going to give me 10 points every week. Like, cool, that's consistency. And yes, I can throw that out there. And that's why I came up with my browse system this year, which lets me balance those reliable players with the spiky players. I think that's where it's at. So I don't mind drafting guys who are just, the vegetables of your fantasy team, right? Who are just there. Like, I don't love them, but they, provide the nutrition, they provide points, and they may not be weekly winners and they'll never be top 10 in their position, but they might always be they might be 15th in their position every week. That's good enough for me for fantasy.
Yeah. I think you need that balance at the end of the day too, of guys you can count on. Obviously, you want to shoot for upside in the flex spots sometimes, but also like having a I wouldn't call him like an old veteran or anything, but having like a Christian Kirk who's not going to win you your week necessarily, but he's going to be a reliable option. Or you can look at the veterans that are being drafted super late, like I'm just Mike Williams. If he's healthy, he tore his ACL week 3 of last year. He had a long window. He should be the wide receiver 2 for Aaron Rodgers. And he's had some very, very relevant fantasy weeks throughout his entire career, regardless if he's been, a bit boom or bust, so you can find those guys and they can truly balance out your lineups.
Yeah, I'm always big on balance. That's why I created the browse system this year, which is balance, reliability, and opportunities with spikes and excitement. Like, I want that balance. And some people want more spikes and excitement. They want that kind of boomer bust team. I don't think that consistently wins you weeks. I don't think it consistently wins you games in fantasy. It's fun and exciting, but it doesn't always win. And I'll take the more reliable team, even though it's not fun and sexy. It's not the team that, when you look across the matchup sheet on your, on your app, you're going, oh, I'm not worried about Dustin's team because it's just but I'll still beat you. I'll still beat you, 8 out of 10 weeks or whatever it is, or 7 out of 10 weeks. I'll take that. So any other tips and tricks you want to talk about preseason before we move on that people should be looking for, ways they can utilize preseason to help them win or have more fun in fantasy?
The last point I want to make is that while we should analyze preseason and the reports that come out, the amount of reactions on fantasy Twitter to every little thing, like there's some guys that like I like them, I do, but I will see them pop up on my timeline, and it's like they have to quote tweet every single report that comes out with like this huge analysis, and sometimes it's just, I don't know. I think a lot of these reports are things to keep in mind. There are things to pay attention to. They are things to be aware of. They don't always have to be like, all right, what is the big picture impact of this report that came out?
Yeah.
What does this mean for, rising or dropping someone in fantasy football? Now this guy's a breakout. Now this guy is not going to be good. There's too much of that out there. So I would say, and I whiff all the time, and I've made a lot of bad calls throughout my analyst career, but find people that are consistent with their analysis, and they have a lot of context to what they do. I put out a lot of lists all the time for different things, but I also put out tons of context and emphasize the why in other ways. So if people are overreacting to everything without context or a why, just be wary of that sometimes, because I feel like there's just reacting to react and try to get a rise out of people at this time of year.
Yeah, they're trying to catch the trends. I agree with you. I always say once is a fluke, twice is a trend, third times is a pattern. Like, yeah, I could have one preseason game and you have to look at context. Like, wasn't it against second or third team? Who are they playing? Who else was on the field? If they do it once, I don't care. Right? You get that reaction because it's the buzz on Twitter, right? That Denver game was the only game on, and people were just overreacting to Bo Nix. Cool. Maybe if you want to capitalize on a short-term spike on Bo Nix's value and trade him away, I'm okay with that. But I think for me, like, don't look at 1 week fluke. I like to look at preseason as a whole. So that week between, it used to be week 4 preseason, which we don't have anymore. I'd look back and go, what did this guy do over the 3 games of preseason, right? How did he look? How did his stats measure up? Like, what was he consistent? Because once is a fluke, twice is a trend, and 3 times is a pattern. I'm looking for patterns in fantasy football. I'm willing to jump on a trend, but I'm not going to sell the farm for a trend. But I'll bank on a pattern that some guy has shown me. If 3 weeks of consistent production, or being good, or looking good, doing the right things on film, or getting the snaps, or earning the opportunities, that's what I'm going to buy into. So, have any more thoughts on preseason? Feel free to drop them in the comments. This, I try to come back. Hit us up on Twitter. It's been scrolling at the bottom of the whole show. Nick, before we get out here, we got one more thing, and we are going to do a Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore?
Yes, a Mount Rushmore. And I know you're a Bears fan, so this is why I did this one. I want you to give me your Mount Rushmore of NFL quarterbacks all time.
All right, Mount Rushmore. So how many qualifies Mount Rushmore?
4.
Is it 4? All right, 4. All right, so all time for me, quarterbacks. Obviously going to toss out Tom Brady. I've been a Tom Brady fan. Like I'm not saying like I was riding with. I mean, I'm not saying anything crazy like that. But I know there's a lot of people that dislike Tom Brady. I've always liked Tom Brady. 7 Super Bowls, 10 trips. I've always liked his competitiveness, like the Kobe mentality that people talk about. I think Brady has his own version of that. He's one of the best athletes ever. And I think, a lot of people thought or debated it. Was it the system? Was it Tom Brady? I think at the end of the day, you had to make the throws. You had to make the plays. Yep. And Brady did in more than one home. So that's one. I'm gonna put Mahomes in there because I think that he is just by far in this day and age the best talent in the league. And I think that what's unfortunate for other quarterbacks, Josh Allen and the Joe Burrows of the world, is that it almost seems like they're all second tier to Patrick Mahomes because he's just been dominant in the league. And even in a year that he wasn't, super, super dominant, he still won a Super Bowl. So I think that it's almost unfair to these other guys because it's not like there's a bunch of rivalries. It's like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and everybody else who wants to like try to take a swing on them at the end of the day. And I think that says a lot. 3 Super Bowls, 4 appearances. You wouldn't be shocked if they go right back this year. I mean, he doubled his weapons if they're all healthy from last year, and they won last year. So to me, that's scary. So I'm going to throw him in there. Another guy I'm going to throw in there, won't talk too deep on him, but I think Peyton Manning. You talk about Tom Brady and his impact. I think Peyton Manning just checks the boxes of an elite talent, pocket passer, just MVPs, 2 Super Bowls and 2 different with two different teams. A guy that just genuinely has been a great person throughout his entire career. The stats speak for themselves. He's dominant through the year. We have a football. Football has changed this day and age to where we have these like super dynamic, athletic dual threat quarterbacks that are super impactful, and you had like a super unathletic guy that just like was phenomenal at what he did. And I think he just, had a huge impact on the NFL for his entire career. And then the last guy, this is very spicy, but I'm not saying he's one of the best ever. I think he's just impactful to me. And I know a lot of people dislike him, but Michael Vick was my favorite quarterback growing up as a young kid. I have 1,000 jerseys at my house. He was my first ever jersey, was Michael Vick. He was a cheat code in video games, just like a freak athlete. Like we look at like Lamar Jackson's and Jalen Hurts's, but I still don't know if they stack up to Michael Vick, because not only was he built like a linebacker and he ran like a fullback or whatever, but he had a cannon, an absolute cannon of an arm. And I know we have all these athletic guys today that are, true playmakers, but I don't know if we got a Michael Vick, because I just, the way he played football changed the game, in my opinion. There's been a lot of mobile quarterbacks throughout time, but I think Michael Vick changed the game, and he made me love football. I was excited. I had his action figure, the jersey. Everybody wanted to be the Falcons on Madden, and that was Michael Vick and his impact on football.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. So obviously I put Brady and Peyton Manning on my Mount Rushmore. Yeah. I think it's undeniable. I have to stick Joe Montana on there. I think
fair.
I think if Joe Montana was playing in today's game, I think he surpasses, Manning's numbers, Breeze, and Brady. I think he's just up there. I mean, he still had a ton of Super Bowls, never lost in a Super Bowl. You make a good point with Vic in terms of like a game changer in terms of what the quarterback position can be. We had some running quarterbacks before him. You had a Randall Cunningham. You had Steve Young. But you're right, Vic was built like a linebacker, but runs like Tyreek Hill, but hits you like you're like a fullback, but did have a cannon and just had the moves like Barry Sanders, where he was just a walking highlight reel. I just don't know if I could put him on there, because when you start talking like who changed the game, yes, I do think he is, but then did Cam Newton go above and beyond what Michael Vick did in terms of rushing? I think he did. Now we're looking at Lamar and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are going to surpass them. I think I agree with you. I think at this point, Mahomes is on there. I originally had Aaron Rodgers. 2 back-to-back MVPs, but only one Super Bowl. Now Mahomes has a second MVP. I think Mahomes has passed Rodgers. Now, I think if Rodgers can win another Super Bowl or have another amazing year, I think he makes a case, but I think he's just the first man off, and I think Mahomes is enough to get on there. For every year that Rodgers has, now Mahomes is going to have, and Mahomes is going to have 6, 7, 10 years past whenever Rodgers stops playing. So I think you're right. Mahomes has to be on there. What he's able to do, and he does amazing things, right? We've seen these behind the back passes and these no-look passes. But he's so good at the ordinary things that a quarterback should do that he just does exceptionally well.
Yeah. His
throwing motion is so effortless to me. It's just like a flick of the wrist and it's 40 yards down the field. It's so smooth, and so it's, because I think it's that baseball like snap of the wrist thing. He does the little things exceptionally well. And then he does the exceptional things exceptionally well. And where I think guys out there like when you talk about Aaron Rodgers does the normal things really, really well, not exceptionally well, but he does them well, but he does them always. Like, I think Mahomes is just a step above him. So I have it Brady, Manning, Montana, and Mahomes on my Mount Rushmore. So those are our Mount Rushmores. If you guys are listening, drop your Mount Rushmores in the comments. We'd love to get, start that conversation with you guys. Nick, it's been great having you on talking preseason, giving the people some tips and tricks of how to look at preseason, what they should and shouldn't take out of preseason, how to use that information towards fantasy. Before we go, give them one more plug of where they can find you, where they can find your stuff.
Sure. And thank you very much for having me on. Very excited to come talk football and not just like continue to spit out just the ordinary fantasy takes and talk about some other stuff here. But you can follow me on Twitter or X at P2W Fantasy. That's where a majority of my content is. I'm on other social platforms, but it's right there on the screen. You can catch articles and short videos and graphics and data drops and rankings and whatever you're looking for. I'm doing it. I try to diversify my content and do it very frequently. I don't, I'll interact to a good extent, but I'm kind of about that business right now. So I'm in there just plugging content. talking to people, who comment on the content. And also want to plug Fantrax and our team. Justin's part of that team right there. I have a lot of really good members that were existing before I was leading the team. And then there's also guys like Dustin who I went and brought on. And I really think we have some awesome content that will be dropped consistently this coming season, every single day in various forms, covering all topics. So be sure you are keeping up with Fantrax, not only just an app, but a fantasy football brand with a lot of great content creators like Dustin next to me here. So thanks again, man.
Thanks very much. If you guys are watching this, hit that like and subscribe, support the podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be here every Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, having a conversation around a football topic, helping you guys understand football and some of these broader topics better as we bridge the gap between them and football. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Bridge the Gap.